The views and opinions expressed here on Wrestling Winedown are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. What's up, guys? It's Lo, and you are tuned in to Wrestling Winedown, a female-founded and hosted podcast dedicated to professional wrestling and our favorite adult beverage. Welcome back to another episode of The Life of a Wrestling Fan, our series where we spotlight amazing individuals with extraordinary careers who also happen to be professional wrestling fans. I am joined by Maegan Rivera, who is quite the Jane of all trades. She is a special education teacher as well as a chef. Maegan recently had the opportunity to cater for Effie's Big Gay Brunch in Chicago, Illinois for All Out Weekend. Along with her many passions, Maegan also happens to be a professional wrestling fan. We are spilling the wine on Maegan's love and passion of professional wrestling and her passion in the classroom as well as the kitchen. So grab your favorite glass of bubbly. We're going in for the 3 count. We are back with another episode of The Life of a Wrestling Fan, and I am here with Maegan Rivera. She somehow has all the time in the world. I wish I had as much time as she did. She's a chef, she's a substitute teacher, and a wrestling fan. Welcome to Wrestling Winedown. How are you?
I'm doing well. Have my coffee. I'm excited for our conversation.
Let's start from the beginning. When did your love of professional wrestling begin?
So I was one of the kids growing up where, all my family members were big wrestling fans, and I would kind of tag along with my older cousins. And I knew I knew of The Rock, I knew of Stone Cold, I knew of Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chyna. But of course, as I got a little older, I was like, wrestling's not cool, wrestling's not this. And I kind of lost track of it. But I would say I became a fan that was on my own during the pandemic. If there's anything I love more than wrestling, it is Milwaukee Bucks basketball. I'm a huge Milwaukee Bucks fan, and everything shut down except for WWE and wrestling. So my parents started watching Raw. He started with WrestleMania in 2020, and then we started watching the weekly shows. It started off with Raw and then SmackDown, and then we started watching NXT, and I started getting into it myself more. So I was like, when he was not around or when we were do separate nights, I would be watching Raw by myself and getting really involved with the characters. And I remember Bianca Belair being one of the first people I really started connecting to. Sasha Banks, that's someone who I really love. But I started watching more on my own, and then we started getting into AEW and the independent circuit. And I think that's when AEW slowly started to climb up for me, because that's when Thunder Rosa was starting to come in, watching Britt Baker and her championship run, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and just started to watch on my own and get to know the characters and the wrestlers on my own. So started when I was a kid. I knew who people were, but as I got older, and during the pandemic, I started getting involved and started watching more and more.
Are there any specific wrestlers that you enjoy watching in all of the companies that you are a fan of?
Oh, man, I have to go through different companies, but definitely WWE. I support all the women, especially Black women, Naomi, Sasha Banks, Bianca. I also love Bayley as well. Bayley, when I started really getting into it, Bayley and Sasha were a tag team champions. And so I got to see the two of them together, and then I saw their fall apart, and I was like, wow, that's kind of sad. And then for the men, I'm a big Finn Balor fan. I love Finn Balor, especially learning about his background in New Japan. Big E, when he won the championship belt from Bobby, I was like, Big E. But yeah, those are for WWE. AEW, I have a list, but my top 4, definitely Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston, Thunder Rosa, Jade Cargill. I really appreciate them. And then some of my other indie wrestlers, smaller promotions, Effie, obviously. I love Effie. Alley Catch, their tag team Bussy. I go to Black Label Pro a lot. And so I love Joshua Bishop a lot. He
We
actually
just talked about Joshua Bishop on our last episode. He was flinging chairs at the BLP show during All Out Weekend. He almost hit us with some chairs. I'm like, but Joshua Bishop, what's the problem?
Oh, but at this BLP show, he was just like, he was rocking it low. Like, I can't even like explain. He got the crowd hype, and I just love him. Dante Martin is someone I'm a big high flyer type of girl. So anyone who's a high flyer, I automatically like, I love you. But yeah, I mean, like, I watch so much wrestling that like from different cross now that like it's just hard for me to pick a list, but those are like the top that I always like to talk about.
Let's get into your busy life. We'll start with teaching. When did you embark on this journey of teaching?
This is my 7th year of teaching in my own classroom. I am a special education teacher. I work with middle schoolers, but I started off with 4th and 5th graders. I did Teach for America here in Milwaukee, actually. So that's how I got into the classroom. And this was after I did City Year, which is another organization that mentors and tutored children inside schools. So technically I've been in schools for about 9 years. So I'm getting up there, but I started teaching in 2016. I had my group of kids, I had about 15 kids, and they were mainly 5th and 6th graders at that point. So I've always wanted to teach special ed and work with kids with IEPs, with disabilities, because I like working in a small group setting. So about 7 years. Wow, that's been a while for me.
What made you go down that path? You said that you wanted to teach for a long time, but what was that moment that made you know, like almost like your aha moment where you were like, okay, I'm definitely going to be a teacher. I'm going to get in this classroom and I'm going to teach these kids?
So when I was a City Year, I did City Year here in Milwaukee as well. And I actually told Teach for America that I'm not going to leave Milwaukee. I won't do the program if I leave Milwaukee, because my City Year kids really inspired me to stay in the city and become a teacher. And during my 2nd year, I had this young lady, and she didn't receive any additional supports, and she would try her best, and I would help her so much, and my co-teacher would help her so much, and her effort and everything was there, and there were some disconnects, and I'm like, wow, this is what I want to do. And helping her in a small group setting and helping her meet where she was at and encouraging her and like not letting her spirit die down, even if she wasn't doing like getting the grades, like I would encourage her and she wouldn't give up. And I'm like, wow, I want to do this full time. I want to do this, after I'm done with my service. Cause I guess the teaching bug has always been with me. Like all my family members were like, you're meant to be a teacher. And I was like, nah, I'm a Taurus. I'm like, nah, you can't tell me what to do. But when I met that young lady and started connecting with my 2nd year City Year kids, that was the moment where I'm like, I think teaching's for me. And I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I love it. I mean, teaching's not easy at all. And it's so like every single year, I sometimes with the same kids, I sometimes get new kids. And I always tell myself, like, I learn something new every day from them. And my kids are really like my babies. And I always encourage them. And that's like seeing that she was a spark, but every single year, I always see these kids and I'm like, let's do this.
Has the topic of wrestling ever come up in the classroom?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
So a lot of my kids are WWE fans. They know Roman Reigns, obviously. Everyone knows Roman Reigns. They know Bianca. They know Bailey. They know Becky. They know Charlotte. They know Sasha. They know Drew. And, we would talk about WWE often. And then I went to the Royal Rumble last January this year. And my students were like, you watched wrestling? And I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. But none of them knew AEW. And this is when I was really getting into AEW. Like we would watch random matches from Dynamite. So I think we watched the Young Bucks FTR match. We watched Hangman Page and Dante Martin just to like introduce them to new wrestlers. Especially Dante Martin. Like my student like really was like amazed by him. He was like, Miss Rivera, this is just so cool. Like he could do things I couldn't imagine. And we would watch like part of Dynamite when we had some downtime on Friday. This year we haven't had the chance, but my coworker told the whole middle school that, yeah, Miss Rivera watches wrestling in her spare time and she goes to all these shows. So more kids are now like, hey, Miss R, like, did you watch SmackDown? Did you watch Raw? And I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. And I have like one little buddy in particular. His dad is a big wrestling fan and he talks about it. So we're going to catch up before each pay-per-view for WWE just to kind of say, what do you think is going to win? But yeah, like sometimes they are fans, and we're going to get to the part where I start showing them other promotions soon.
I'm sure you've heard of Victor Perry's wrestling club that he has in New York. Have you thought of starting one at your school, since there is a lot of interest from the students who like wrestling?
Eventually, yeah. I have so much I do like in the building every day. Like, but I do want to start like a lunch club one day just to like watch some wrestling matches with some of the kids in the school. But yeah, he's definitely an inspiration. I definitely want to be on his level. And I definitely want to invite wrestlers into my classroom because, you know, a lot of them are Black and brown, and that's representation our kids need. And I want to put good role models out there. And I try to introduce, especially like wrestlers that look like my students. So Keith Lee was one I actually introduced because I'm like, Keith Lee's this big guy and he's so cool. Let's watch him. And I get hyped, and then they're like hyped. And like I had one student I think about last year, and she would just get so into it. Her profanity was a little bit, but but she would just get into it and get in with the crowd and everything. But yeah, he's someone that I definitely look up to, and someone I definitely like going to model one day. That's a goal. So maybe start off in the middle of the year, maybe start off with a few students just watching some matches from the week that were fun.
What does it mean to you to teach our next generation of leaders?
It's important. It's a big duty. And for me, teaching, like, we're going to talk about my cooking soon, but if my cooking grows, I don't want to give up teaching. I think I've always want to be a teacher. Our kids need consistent, stable people in their lives. They need people who are going to bring different things that they might not have learned about beforehand. And, you know, like I always tell every group of kids that come into my classroom, like, I'm teaching you to be good citizens and good humans. And we want to make sure, like, have that positivity in their lives. School's supposed to be a safe space. And I try to live up to that. You know, like if my kids are hungry, I give them a snack to put their head down because they didn't sleep well the night before. Let them put their head down because you can't learn if you're not feeling well and if you don't have your basic needs met. So I like to provide a safe, caring space. And I'm pretty sure my students feel safe in my classroom and safe in the space I created. And it's not just for the students I serve, because I do work with students with IEPs. It's for anyone. And I try to connect with students who are not on my caseload just to make sure they have an extra adult that they can talk to. And my coworkers are on the same boat. And I'm very lucky to be at a school that a lot of us stay, and we stay for years at. And especially the team I work with, I got to give them a shout out because they know that the students know that the team is close and like we're like family, and we try to build that family community throughout the whole middle school, throughout the whole school. Just providing a safe space and a place where they can learn something that they might not have learned is important. And our kids need people, and that's something I take to heart. And yeah, I get really a little emotional about it because whenever I think about my students, it's just important to be there for them, be consistent, be stable, be a positive role model, and be loving. You know, like our kids need it. And it's important. It's so important to me.
I definitely agree with you. Let's get into the reason that we actually connected. You are a chef. Tell me about your background of whipping up delicious dishes and how you got your start in cooking.
I've been cooking ever since I was young, and my mom can probably attest to this. I would not watch Saturday morning cartoons. I would watch Food Network.
Oh, I know that's right.
In the morning, you know, I always love cooking because my cooking's a big part of my family culture and traditions. Like we always come together over meals, over holidays where we have so much food. Like my mom likes to joke that like she can cook for an army, which is very true. But excuse me. But you know, I learned from her. I learned from my grandmas. I learned from my aunts, my titis, and I kind of just started learning other things yeah, like just learning from my family members is how I really got to learn how to cook. And then watching Food Network and watching like Barefoot Tessa and Emma Lagasse.
Yes. You like Sandra Lee?
Semi Homemade, I would watch that with my mama. Tyler Florence, Bobby Flay, like all these Food Network stars, Shada, I would watch all the time. And so, yeah, like I would just watch them and then practice. And my mom and my dad would encourage it because I started off with baking. Like I would want to learn how to bake. I think I was like, most kids were wanting like dolls. I think I wanted a KitchenAid since I was like 7 or 8 years old. But yeah, we just started teaching myself and then I started expanding and watching YouTube. TikTok is one place like I love to get new recipes from. So, and I got to shout out my boy, Gordon Ramsay and Anthony Bourdain. They kind of bring like the hustle part of it, especially Anthony Bourdain. I love him so much because of the fact that he brings the human part to food. And for me, food is supposed to be together and food is supposed to bring people together all over the place. So that's kind of where I started. And I just basically self-taught and tried new things, had my mom, my college roommates try my dishes. My partner is my ultimate taste tester. So like I just try new things. And if I want to try it, I practice it until I get it to the place I want to.
You recently had the opportunity to provide the catering for Effie's Gay Brunch in Chicago. Tell me about how this experience came about.
So it's actually pretty funny. I met Effie a couple times at smaller promotions like Black Label Pro and freelance wrestling in Chicago. And he's someone who always stays out and like greets all his fans, take pictures. And I told him at a freelance wrestling show, and I believe in late April or early May, that I'm going to cater your brunch. Let me cater your brunch. I can cook. Don't worry about your cooking. I can do it. And he was like, oh, we'll see. And then I saw him again at Black Label and I'm like, let's do this. Like, I'm willing to do it. Like, are you looking to come back to Chicago for the brunch? And he was like, yeah, like we're going to come back for All Out weekend. And then All Out was announced and then GCW Summit was announced as well. So it was during StarCast weekend that we went down to Nashville, my partner and I, just to go to the different shows. And I told him again, like, seriously, let's do this. Like, I'm willing to do it. Like, my summer job is ending early August. I'll have the time. School doesn't start until the 6th. Like, I won't be focusing on lesson planning. And he like trusted me. And it started off with that. So, and then we started connecting more. And that's when the magic started to happen. So that was the beginnings of the brunch happening.
Take me through what a day of an event looks like. What are you doing beforehand? What are you doing when you get to the actual location of the event? And then how do you figure out how much of an item you need? Just take me through everything. I'm very curious.
Oh man, it's a process. So this summer is when I really started branching out into my business to cooking food. So like basically the way I set up menus or set up my food is I take pre-orders. So basically to see how much I should buy of a certain product, certain meal. And I make everything on my own. Like I chop all the veggies, all the fruits, prep all the sauces, get all the ingredients. I do all the shopping. So it takes me about at least a week and a half out before I actually start to cooking, just to get the ingredients and supplies I need. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to have like a Sam's Club membership, Costco membership, Restaurant Depot membership to kind of help me buy some of the larger items in bulk. So yeah, it starts off with pre-orders, so I guess how much I need to buy. For Effie's brunch and for bigger orders, I did have a helper, and shout out to Riley. Riley's also a fellow educator in the public school district in my city. And we met through TFA, and he was like, I told him like, I might need help with this. Can you help me with some of the prep work? And he was like, yeah, I've never been to a wrestling show. Let's do this. And so he came couple days beforehand to help me chop up veggies, help me like set up the pan so I can bake certain things. And like with Effie's brunch, he kind of gave me a target number of what he wanted. And so we kind of built that. And I tested out these recipes the weekend before too. So like I try to test out food a week or two out and I give them to people I know, just I'm like, give me some feedback, give me some things that I should do. And I did that. So I got to figure out about how much a pan makes per serving, how much should be served. So yeah, I prep everything before the event. And then the day of event, especially Effie's brunch, I had everything organized too. So I had my containers, I had everything labeled, I had the equipment I needed. So the day of the brunch, there's like, the Grand Sports Arena, it's not you have to set it up to make sure it's organized. So luckily GCW and Effie's people had us set up, like helped us set up tables near an outlet, helped us with making sure we were okay, making sure the heaters had the water so they can heat up the food. And like, it takes us about at least an hour and a half to 2 hours to kind of get the food warmed up and ready to serve, because we want to make sure the food's hot and ready, like people can enjoy it instead of having cold food. Right. So like, it takes an army. So like, definitely if it's a smaller catering gig, it's usually just me and my partner. But for a bigger one, we definitely need people. So I was very lucky to have people to help me set up stuff, help me put out the food, help me organize how the table should be, organize the cost, like the paying. I didn't have to worry about people paying me. Someone set it up in the front. So yeah, it takes a process. And then the easiest part, to be honest with you, Lo, is serving. Serving is definitely the easiest part because, like, you just serve the hot food, you greet people with a big smile, you answer questions, you make sure like you separate the allergies and dietary restrictions such as vegan, gluten-free away from the non-vegan and non-gluten-free stuff. And you just serve and just make sure everything's organized. So when people get their food, all they see is smiling people be like, what would you like me to feed you today? Oh, I would like this. And that was like, after everyone's served, cleaning up is probably even easier than serving, in my opinion, because you're just like, let me toss stuff out, let me clean this stuff out. And I make sure to prep items too, like crock pots, my electric oven with like liners. So all I really need to do is just wipe everything on one clear spot and make it easier for me. And so prep does take longer than the actual day of service, but in the end, it makes the ending part a lot easier than you would expect it to be.
What was the reception like for your food at the brunch? Did you receive any compliments that have stuck with you even after the event is over with?
Oh man, so many people came up to me. My first customer for the brunch technically was Speedball Mike Bailey. And I know
Speedball.
Oh, Speedball is like one of the nicest people you will ever meet. That man is so sweet. And he said he was helping with the brunch because he wanted the food. And so he came. He went through the line first, and I went towards him when people started getting served more. I'm like, how is everything? He goes, it is so good. Like, it's really good. I like this, I like that. And he actually, before the brunch started, he recorded me for his blog, just to kind of introduce me and showcase the food. So he was really excited. And that kind of made me pumped up for the show. MLJ, I served him, and I made sure to serve crew, the talent, anyone who was helping behind the scenes and give them food because, they have a busy day too. MLJ gets my food. He was like, it looks good. And then he comes back and he goes, if I had three thumbs up, like 3 thumbs, they would all be up right now. His food was banging. And so, and then other talents like came up to me and they were just like, the food is really good. Do you have any extra food so we can eat? And I'm like, yeah, let's feed you. And they just kept on coming up and be like, your food is delicious. There was one person in particular that I asked for his specific feedback because he was a vegan, one of the first vegan customers. And I'm like, please tell me anything I need to change. This is like the first time I'm doing like a really big vegan order. And he came back to me. He goes, it tasted like a restaurant. It tasted so good. And like the way you did your biscuits, like I thought they were biscuits with dairy products in it. And I was like, no, they're actually vegan. And he goes, what type of ingredients you use? Because if it's something that my friend uses in his bakery, and he goes like, but you have it nailed down. And that really stuck to me too, because in my cooking, I try to accommodate everyone and try to make sure everyone's needs are met and needs are like, and people are fed. And especially with vegan cuisine, I know vegan cuisine is starting to get more in popularity, but a few years ago, it wasn't that popular. And you could do so much in the vegan cuisine type of area that it was cool to get that type of feedback as well. So yeah, those are like 3 people that really stood out to me. But pretty all like overall, the reception was positive. People were really excited. It was the first time there was actual brunch at Effie's Big A Brunch. So people were excited to eat. People were excited to have food. And I got really great reviews, and that made me feel really good.
What were F.E.'s thoughts and reception on the food?
He was happy. I think he was really excited to have like someone willing to cook and someone willing to dedicate time, because he's really busy up until the brunch. Like he does so much. And Effie, I got to give him a shout out because he really checks in on his people. Like Effie is one of the greatest people you will ever meet and talk to. And he's so caring. And he was like making sure if I was all right. I made sure to save him some food. He said the food was delicious, but he was happy it went smoothly. Like at first, like we had people serving themselves, and then the line was taking a little too long. And he was like, "Can you make sure like you serve them?" And as soon as we started serving people ourselves, like my crew helpers, I would say my partner and my friend, it went smoothly. So he was happy with the reception. He was happy how it came out. And the dishes I created were based on Effie and his wrestling life, his background, his tagging of Alley Catch. Like a lot of the dishes were based on him. He was happy to have something that represents him. He was happy to have something that went well, and finally have brunch at brunch.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about the dishes that you had at the brunch and what were the inspiration behind them.
Oh yeah, I had so much fun creating this menu, Lo. I cannot explain. Effie basically let me have free reign. And I initially came up with this menu around his birthday, just to try to get me to push to do the brunch. And so the first dish that I did and created was Daddy's Peaches. So as you know, that Effie likes to be called Daddy, and Daddy's a big part. And so Daddy's Peaches is a French toast bake with like a custard sauce that you bake with Texas toast, and it's so good. It has cinnamon and it tastes like the French toast, but it's all in a casserole. And I topped it with homemade peach sauce because Effie is from Georgia. And so I was like, do a little something nod to his background and where he lives in Current Riverside. So Daddy's Peaches is based on where he's from, a little play of his character, of his persona as well, and just a little extra sweetness. The next one is definitely a rip on Effie is Fine, and it's called Eggy is Fine. Eggy is Fine was a frittata with mixed vegetables and Wisconsin cheddar cheese, because I'm based out of Wisconsin. So basically, it's just your typical frittata with some veggies, just kind of like, but I wanted to play on the Effie is Fine, and the Eggy is Fine was just almost too perfect. So that was the inspiration for Eggy is Fine. And I served that with some homemade salsa rojo and salsa verde, which added an extra finesse to it. I like that word, finesse. And the last dish I did is a nod to Allie and Effie, and it's Bussie's Biscuits. Bussie's Biscuits was a take on the traditional biscuits and gravy, except I used chorizo gravy because, you know, Effie and Allie are a little bit spicy. They have a little bit of character, and I was able to do this vegan as well. So I was able to get soy chorizo. But yeah, it was your typical biscuits and gravy with a chorizo gravy. The biscuits I made were not your typical biscuits. They were butterscotch biscuits, which are fluffier, and they hold the gravy a whole lot more. Actually, Trevor Outlaw, who is a wrestler based out of Chicago, I just saw him the other day, and he was like, "Those biscuits you made were so good." And I was and like butterscotch biscuits, I learned from like a foodie group I'm a part of on Facebook. So I was going to roll out biscuits, and I'm like, that's too much. Butterscotch is better, and it actually came out way better than I was expecting. So it's a little bit play on Allie and Effie's tag team. I love a good like name that flows. Bussie's Biscuits is almost too perfect. So those were the three main dishes that I did for the brunch.
Before we wrap up, I have to ask, what advice would you give to people who are busy trying to make an impact in multiple fields like yourself? We all have 24 hours, but how do you utilize your 24 hours to the best of your ability?
Well, you know, especially being in different fields, especially being in teaching, like, and this was something I struggled with as a Maegan first year teacher, is time management and boundaries. For me, if I don't have my time to take care of myself, I'm not going to be happy. And this is ever since I was like a little kid. Like my mom even goes, "You're not feeling well. Have you been sleeping?" And I'm like, "Stop calling me out, Ma." But for me, like you can't pour yourself from an empty cup. And it starts with taking care of the person yourself. And I always tell my students, like, if I'm not feeling 100% that day, I'm like, hey, Miss R might not have got enough sleep. So make sure she drinks her coffee. Make sure she drinks her water. And my kids will literally go, my students will go, Miss Rivera, did you drink your water? Did you finish your coffee? Your coffee's still full. What is happening, Miss Rivera? So it's all about self-care and boundaries. And I make sure to dedicate time to me, whether it's just laying on my couch, watching wrestling or a movie, or, seeing my girlfriends, going to the movies with my partner. That's one of the things we love to do, or even just cooking, not for other people, cooking for me. Those are some of the things I like to do for myself. And then you have to prioritize what's important first. One of the things that I struggled with as like a younger teacher was like and especially being in special education, like you have a lot of paperwork to write, for example. And like my general education peers have to do report cards. So I try to get those done ahead of time. Or if I'm like starting to, I prioritize that. So I always try to give myself a week or two out before I have meetings to kind of get myself prepared. When I first started teaching, like I didn't really have a prep time to work on my stuff, but now I do. And I make sure to schedule it so I don't have to bring work home. Because I want to make sure home is my space where I relax, not a space where I work. And I actually took that from like people I know and everything. And yeah, those are like my two biggest tips. And just make sure you know what you're able to accomplish. And you have, like my kids and I just did this at the beginning of the year, create your SMART goals. Like SMART goals are something that I teach my students, because like if you make a too big goal and you don't have anything that, if it's not achievable, if it's not attainable, if it's not relevant, you're going to be discouraged if you do not meet this goal. So I always try to do SMART goals with some of the bigger projects. For example, with Effie's brunch, I made sure to set out a schedule. So I knew what to do. Like I would go shopping these days, and then, or like, for example, I would start off with testing recipes and then shopping and then prepping and then cooking. And you just want to make sure you organize your time. But I always go back, like if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't do as much as you want. And my mom, even now, I'm 30 years old, and my mom goes, I like tell her I'm not feeling well, so I have a big headache. And my mom would always go back to, did you sleep? Have you been sleeping? Have you done something for yourself? And I'm like, okay, Ma. And so, yeah, like you got to take care of yourself. That's like my overall biggest piece of advice.
Definitely some great advice there. Thank you so much, Maegan, for joining me here on Wrestling Winedown. Where can the people follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter on Maegan. So it's OHMAEGAN. My name is spelled differently than other Meagans. On Instagram, Maegan, Maegan, MKE_MKE. And then my business pages on Instagram is Mama Rivera Sofrito. And then on Facebook, Mama Rivera Sofrito as well. Yeah, just look for the logo with the Puerto Rican and Ecuadorian flag, and you know you're in the right place.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wrestling Winedown. You can find all of our other episodes available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WWDCAST. We also have our official merch store, which you can find at shop.wrestlingwinedownlv.com. Let us know what you thought about this episode. What was your favorite part? Until next time, enjoy your wine and, of course, enjoy your wrestling. Cheers!